Hey guys, Mike here. We're going to be unboxing a FortiGate 40F, so stay tuned. So this channel, we've never really done a whole lot of unboxing. Usually any type of deep dive or product review had specifically to do with the fact that I had the product on site. Now, you guys love unboxings, at least that's what the request via email and personal message and direct message and all that stuff lead me to believe. And in the past, I wasn't able to do them. Wouldn't make sense to go out and buy device A, device B, device C, etc. just to do a video. Because let's face it, these videos actually don't make me much money at all, if any, really. So it wouldn't make a lot of financial sense if I had gear that was going to sit and be idle outside of the initial video, right? Thankfully for me, I've developed a partnership with a company called Corporate Armor. They're an online firewall sales, and basically the premise of it is they'll send me gear, they'll let me do unboxings and review it so that you guys can get, true information about the product, see what it looks like, hear my words and recommendations based on that thing, and then I don't have to pay for the gear or anything like that. So it ends up being a win-win situation for us. And of course, today is going to be a FortiGate 40F. If you've ever seen any of my previous videos talking about how to size a firewall for a particular environment, one of the main things that you've probably heard me say in the past is that I don't use anything lower than a 60 series device. Now, I started with that recommendation with the 60C. The FortiGate 60C, the FortiWi-Fi 60C, that was the smallest unit I would deploy in any environment. It held true when the 60D came out, and it held true when the 60E came out. The few instances where I actually got to have hands-on experience with the 30E series just reinforced my general feeling of I should never ever deploy anything smaller than a 60 series FortiGate. But then Fortinet did something that I personally wasn't expecting them to do. They released a firewall that is smaller than the 60 series that doesn't suck. And that's where the 40F comes in. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the 40F comes in 3 different flavors. You have the FortiGate 40F, you have the FortiWi-Fi 40F, and then you have the 40F FortiGate that is 3G, 4G capable. And those are actually the ones that I have the most experience with. I've been deploying a lot of those in pseudo cradle point style environments where I can just basically get rid of the cradle point, let the FortiGate do all the work. It has dual SIM, full capability. I will probably do a video specific to that version of it just so we could dive into the cool features that it has. But anyways, today we're looking at the FortiGate 40F. Now, as you can see, I have one. Now, just like any other FortiGate, whenever you get it, it's going to come with your handy dandy RJ45 connector. It will have a quick start guide for those that are impaired on firewalls. And this particular one is actually a combination set for the FortiGate, FortiWi-Fi, both 40F and 60F series. A lot of good stuff in here about, just quick hits. Little things, little nuances if you're completely new to Fortinet that will be good to go. Also, what you'll get is this handy little tray that has the power receptacle and all that fun stuff. But underneath that tray, you will have your FortiGate. Now, the 40F is a smaller unit. The beauty of these smaller desktop style units is they're for small environments. You don't expect these to be deployed in big enterprises or anything like that. They come with wall mount kits, and they're basically, little desktop switches, if you will, or desktop firewalls that give you the capability of just, you sit on your desktop and you're on your way. So let's pop the peel on this one. So, brand new inbox. Get rid of the silica gel. And here you have it. I don't know if it's going to focus on it very well. You have a FortiGate 40F that is a really lean, mean little machine. So it's got 4 internal style switch ports and a single WAN port. It comes with 5 RJ45 ports. Now, this device, even though it's a 40F, has switch fabric, internal switch fabric. So what that means is everything on this is a hardware switch. Hardware switch is nice because that means you actually get to use the fancy brand new SOC 4 chip that's in this thing for hardware acceleration. You're not limited by CPU or anything like that. These guys can be cloud managed, FortiManager managed, or locally set up. You can configure it using the iOS app on your phone as well. But just like every other FortiGate, you know, if you power this on, you plug in the port 1, you can go to 192.168.1.99. That's the default on a FortiGate in general. And of course, username admin, passwords no password, and you're in the go. But the little buddy has 5 RJ45 ports. 3 of them are tied to an internal hardware switch titled LAN or internal, depending on what version of code you're on. The 4th one is a port labeled A, which is specifically for FortiLink. And then it has a WAN port for your upstream internet connection. It also has a standard console port as well as a USB port. So there's a lot of flexibility with this device. Even though it does come out of the box with 2 hardware switches, one for FortiLink, one for internal, if you wanted this guy to manage nothing but Forti switches, you can, you know, tear those hardware switches apart, rebuild them however you want, or you can, you know, add port A to the other internal hardware switch and have flexibility there. So just because this box comes out the gate, no pun intended, with 2 separate hardware switches doesn't mean you have to stay that way. So cool things about this: 1, it's cheaper than a 60F. 2, it is a very, very capable, powerful box. So just a little bit of specs on it. And forgive me for not remembering this by heart, but you know, there's a lot of damn models, so you need to be able to look at it and go, right. This little guy, in all of its glory, is able to push 1 gigabit of IPS inspection, over 800 megabits of next-gen firewall protection, and 600 megabits of threat protection. To put that into perspective, the 60D, when it came out, was able to do like 35 megs of full UTM. Now, Fortinet did change the way they did some ratings, but the 40F is only 2 generations older than the 60D. It's also a smaller unit, a smaller form factor. It's not supposed to be an apples to apples comparison, but thanks to the new SOC, aka system on a chip, that came out with the F-series devices, you now have something that's actually pretty powerful for a lower cost, which is very, very beneficial because obviously internet speeds are jumping up in speed rapidly. Some more information about this little box that's really, really useful is the fact that it can, in fact, do 5,000 firewall policies. Not that you would ever push that many through a device of this size. It can do 200 gateway-to-gateway IPsec tunnels. That means site-to-site tunnels from device to device. It can do 250 client-to-gateway IPsec tunnels. Now, if you're buying a 40F, you're not going to run that many IPsec tunnels. You'd be hunkering down the box and basically stressing it to its core. But it's capable if you ever needed to. Even though it's a smaller form factor FortiGate, this guy can actually support up to 8 Forti switches on 6.4 version code. And it can do up to 16 bridge Forti APs, 8 if they're running tunnel mode. So you don't necessarily need a huge FortiGate to meet your environment. Now, situations where this guy makes sense. Smaller home office that has less than 600 megabits of throughput protection requirement, right? The 40F can do 800 megs of NGFW throughput and 600 megs worth of full threat protection. So when I normally size my FortiGates, that's usually where I look. Because 99 times out of 100, the size that your FortiGate needs to be is going to be tied to how much threat protection you need to enact crossing over interface barriers. Most smaller home setups or smaller office setups usually are relatively flat when it comes to their network. 1 or 2 VLANs, usually they're not running a whole lot of threat protection between them, and that's really what gives you the load on the box, is when you're doing UTM between interface handoffs. So most of the time, especially on smaller units, you want to size your FortiGate based on the internet connection you're transitioning to. If you have a gigabit internet connection, having a box that does more than a gigabit worth of threat protect really isn't going to make sense unless you're doing cross VLAN inspection and things like that. And usually in situations where you're doing those, you're running a data center or something like that, and you're wanting to do higher quality threat protection across your internal interfaces, mostly east-west traffic, things of that nature. FortiGate 40F is now the smallest unit I will deploy at a location. That used to be the 60 series. The 40 is it's a really bitchin' device, and it does a very good job of what it is. I want to give a special thanks to Corporate Armor for providing the gear. Anytime you're given the opportunity to get your hands on a piece of equipment and actually play with it and look at it and show the world how it works without it costing you money is good, because that just means we get to spread the knowledge, right? So check out Corporate Armor if you're in the market and shopping. I have a link in the description of the video. Otherwise, if you have a small unit need and you have an internet connection or something along those lines that's requiring basically 600 meg or less of throughput protection, this is a very, very sound box to start with. I manage roughly 60, maybe 70 of these out in the world across clients. And they've been very, very robust. They work out extremely well, and they save people money. Now, it's not that big of a bump to go to a 60F, but at least you have the opportunity to save a few bucks here if you need to, because it's a very capable device, and you're going to be in a situation where you don't really have to mess around with something that has more ports if you don't need it, or maybe, you know, your switches are somewhere else, so you can do Forti switches and Forti APs off of this little guy. But highly recommend 40F. Check it out. Check out Corporate Armor to get their pricing on it. And if you have any questions about this particular device, post them in the comments below, because I know how I deploy these guys, but you guys might have other use cases that I haven't seen, and I can answer questions about whether or not that would be fruitful for you to use this particular device for what you're trying to do, right? So post your comments below. If you like the video, hit thumbs up. If you hate it, hit thumbs down. It lets me know kind of what angle to take future things. But yeah, unboxing number 1 in the books. Nothing special. Hopefully this provides you some insight into the device, and we can go from there.